I feel like, Jeremiah, I could talk to you all day, but we're going to try to get all the content that's relevant to the audience within the hour for this show. So thank you so much for joining me, Jeremiah. I think I met you very early days of Twitter. I'm going to say maybe 2006, 2008. I don't know.
Seems
I
about
can't
right.
be. It's been
Yeah.
it's been a while. But I wanted to introduce you to my audience. I wanted you to talk about all the things that the future is going to bring. So many topics. One of them is your quarantine schedule. I want to talk about that. Your secret sauce of ADOS. Your Airstream. We're going to talk about how you home office now. You were a speaker before when we had events. Now that we don't have as many in-person events, I want to talk a little bit about that as well. Then a couple things with Peloton, an addiction that I have, and you've seen that on my stories. You have a formula. I want to talk about that, about what they did.
Right.
And then also Clubhouse, how Clubhouse is the new hotness. So that's kind of the topics. If you're joining in the future, from the beginning of this live, if you're here live, welcome. Feel free to put your questions for Jeremiah Owyang in the chat. He is founder of Kaleido Insights. And co-founder of Crowd Companies, is that correct? Or founder
of Kaleido and founder of Crowd Companies. Thank you.
So welcome, Jeremiah. And I think the first time I had you on my TV show was in 2017, and you talked about when cars become alive.
Yes.
And that's how I learned how to pronounce your last name, because I always saw it on Twitter as Joy. I just saw like the joy, right?
Well, I could be joyful too, so I'll take that. So yes, my last name is Owyang, which is difficult, but I'm Jeremiah.
Yes, and then everyone cues the song. I think when they meet you.
I've heard that a few times. Yes,
a few too many times. So Jeremiah, tell me a little bit about where you're broadcasting right now.
Sure.
And that way the audience sees this could be the trend for Silicon Valley. It seems.
Yeah. So a few years ago, my wife and I had some kids, and it was too loud in the house. So I did a financial assessment. Should I rent a space for $2,000 at a WeWork for a private office? I do a lot of calls with corporate executives. Or should I get an Airstream? And I decided to purchase an Airstream. And this is where you see me right now. And I'm actually in my backyard, 29 steps. And it is a business write-off, so it's not really, it's coming off the top line. So as a business owner, it just made a lot of sense. And it is an asset which I could sell later. And I do believe this will be the future, where people are moving to homes that are larger, that have a dedicated office. People are going to leave some people will leave the urban core. Some people are coming up with creative ways. Airstreams are sold out. People want them so bad right now, as well as vans. And people are trying to figure out creative ways they can work from home for the long term. So hi, from the tiny Airstream studios. This is where I work every day.
It's just been great. I've been seeing some of it in the stories, and that was one of the replies in our private chat. You're like, I will show you this on the show. And I was reading an article, I don't know if it was the one written in USA Today about you, or if it was a blog post of yours, but how now people are able to see you're a speaker. So they're able to see this is how you would be presenting to large corporations from the Airstream.
That's right. And what's around me, what you can't really see, is there's lights, and I have a DSLR camera that you're looking at me, excuse me. And I have different types of mics depending on the situation. So I really want to, and I have a 1 gig line, which is critical for, just having a fast internet connection. And so this is how instead of traveling to conferences, I'm just walking 29 steps to the backyard. So I turn this into a studio. This is a way to generate revenue. And if you want to see other photos of the Airstream, do just go to USA Today and search for my name. You'll find the Airstream article. So that was kind of fun.
I'm actually going to pull it up so they can see that. It's funny because, and actually I'll show me before I do this, because otherwise I guess that's weird. I was reading the USA Today article, and I think it was shared by Brian Solis. I think that's how I found it. And I just clicked on the article. It looked interesting. I'm like, that's Jeremiah. That's your Airstream. So yeah, I didn't even realize the article was about you. And you said, how many years ago did you do this?
About 2 years ago, but I kept the Airstream pretty quiet. But once I realized that I needed to showcase, this is how I'm going to present, this is one of my revenue streams, and I started to make some public statements about, hey, I'm ready to work. This is right when the quarantine we were in the midst of it. I say, okay, it's clear that the business conferences aren't going to happen.
Right.
So, I didn't want to make too much noise about it before, but now, well, it's known.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would see a couple of these types of pics, I think on your Instagram or in Facebook. And it always kind of brought up some curiosity of what you were doing. And you were doing it again pre-COVID-19, pre-quarantine. But now it's really come in handy.
It's come in handy. It was just a timing thing. I didn't expect that to happen. So obviously nobody could predict COVID-19 was going to happen. So
one of the things that I think they commented on Brian's or maybe on your post about the Faraday cage and the internet. I think one of my buddies, Scott Bell, was asking about what the speed was. So tell us a little bit about that. Does that ever interfere, or pretty much not?
I haven't had any issues at all. So there is a 1 gig line in the house, and it's Comcast Xfinity. But I have friends at Netgear, and they gave me the Orbi 5G wireless router system. So that pulls in tremendous speeds. Like right now, I'm probably getting 600 even here in the backyard. And it's, I haven't had any issues with the metal here. So it's been working pretty well so far.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Another thing, I'm just going to keep sharing my screen because we're there. You also talked about you've had a great morning workout. You've had a great cross training, I guess we're calling it now. You've been really diligent during quarantine. It has inspired me. Thanks. Anytime I would put my Peloton workouts, my friend was like, "Is Peloton sponsoring you? Why all the posts?" I'm like, "No, it keeps me accountable." And people like you would just go, "Yeah, like a thumbs up or a high five."
Happy for you. I'm proud of you. Awesome. Take care of yourself, and you have, and you look great. Look at you, and we feel great, right? And this is so critical for all of us, whether you're a mom or a dad or a student or a business owner or working for somebody. It doesn't matter. You are responsible for your mind and your body. Nobody else is going to take care of that but you. And so it's really critical that we do that. And so I do calisthenics every morning. I don't have much time. I have a family to manage, and I'm running businesses. And also I can't go to formerly called CrossFit classes anymore because it's shut for quarantine. So I do work out at home as much as I can, real short blasts.
Now, I think you've been more diligent than me. There were times that I was just overworked, overtired, overdepressed, and I would just neglect it. And that's where the gym's been super helpful for me because there is that accountability. But you said you would share the secret to the Superman.
and Superwoman, right? So the super person, yes. So this is a little gimmick, a fitness gimmick. I love to do this in different places. When I travel, I'll do Superman push-ups, as you can see. So that's part of called plyometrics, which is explosive behavior. And so what I do is I get the phone and I put it on selfie mode and video mode, and then I put it on the ground facing upwards, and it's 20 feet away. And then you set it on video because you can't time a still shot. And then the trick here to doing this move, I am in the air. This is not edited. That is a real photo. Is you are doing a push-up, and then you pike your butt up first. And so your butt goes up first. And then once you get into the air, then you straighten your body out. If you're not as strong like me, there's some guys that can just completely horizontal. I'm not able to do that. And then you straighten up, and then I have sand, I threw it, and so for that kind of effect. And then I just turn off the video, and then I find that one image, and then I just screenshot that single image, and then I upload it like that just to get that effect. And it takes me 30 seconds to do that. I do a lot of push-ups. Every other day I do around 100 push-ups, or the next day I do many pull-ups, just as many, or burpees. So this type of stuff, it's suited for plyometrics.
Yeah. And there was another picture I saw on your Instagram.
That's my pull-up bar.
This is your pull-up bar for $12.
Yes, I know people are buying $2,000 bikes, right, Coach?
Yeah.
And here's the thing: whatever it takes, right? Whatever it is to keep you accountable and to keep you going. I just don't have a lot of time, and I don't want any more equipment. So that's the only equipment that I've really used on a frequent basis during quarantine is the pull-up bar, and then I hit the ground doing push-ups and burpees and then runs. Yeah. So I'm just trying to use body weight. But I mean, typically though, I would be at CrossFit. We have a rack, we have barbells, we have kettlebells, we have dumbbells, we got ropes, we got rope climbs, we got tires, we got so much equipment.
Yeah.
That's not accessible to me right now. So it's a real minimalist workout. And there's so much you can just do with your body and body weight if you understand the mechanics of it. So I'm just grateful that I was able to get some of those skills and apply them.
Yeah. And this I loved on your blog article.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So definitely going to talk about how Clubhouse is the new hotness, but this is the new hotness in my house. And I loved the ADOS formula you had there, because I looked at it, I'm like, this is exactly it. So I'd love to have you talk a little bit about how they emerged. Their stock is up, but even before their stock was up, just all the super fans. And I think you had made the mistake of asking a question of why I loved it so much. And I just typed and typed. This could be a chapter. And in fact, it will be a chapter in the next book, because everything about tribal marketing and again, the addiction with the community is there within this app. So share your ADOS formula.
Sure. So I've been actually talking to some of the product leaders. They're in Clubhouse and they saw this post and they get it and they like it. So, So Peloton is amazing. They are taking the best of tech and the best of fitness and the best of social behaviors and combining them into this like perfect experience. It's so perfect that it's like what, a 4-week, 5-week waiting period to get the bike right now, Coach?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And of course they've launched other apps, calisthenics, body weights apps as well. And they have a running machine, but essentially I interviewed 12 users. I sent them, customers sent them their, why do you love it so much, to find out. And I heard a variety of responses, but part of my job, I haven't explained this yet, is I am a tech analyst. So I do research, and big corporations are our clients, and some of them are focused on wellness. Now, this term DOSE, D-O-S-E, isn't new. I heard this it's a common thing among the industry, but I did add adrenaline at the top. So this is something that is already well understood. So it's an acronym. It stands for adrenaline. So obviously you get that from the workout when you get that boost, and they say, kick it into high gear, and they're yelling at you and just encourage you and just go, 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 right? Yeah. The next one is dopamine. And by the way, these are all natural chemicals, and AKA drugs that are released from your body. Dopamine often happens like quick hits, like when Facebook, like for example, I noticed even when you're on your Facebook tab that you have 12 alerts of things that you probably are itching to see. Is somebody talking about me?
Clicked on it. I'm like, no, I'm in a show.
you have very good self-control, but once you see that, by the way, there's a little dopamine hit me. And that behavior is what the tech industry has borrowed from Las Vegas, because and that is well documented, that when you pull the lever on a machine, that you get a dopamine release, and that is pretty common. And so social networks have done that. So when you're in Peloton, the high fives that you get, the leaderboards, and you're scoring well, those are all dopamine hits that one can get.
Yeah, and it's 100% true. I've read a lot about that with the notifications, and one of the things that's in the new book in a chapter is the person who developed the endless scroll regrets it, because it's such an addiction. It's such a dopamine. It's like that whole So this never-ending scroll, because there's always something new. And once we go like that, boom, we get another dose.
YouTube, Netflix, playing the next show, all of that, newspapers, clickbait. All of that behavior. So we should be mindful, like, when is oxytocin good? I'm sorry, when is dopamine good for us, and when is it bad for us?
Right.
So the next one is oxytocin. That's also called the love drug. And this is when you hug somebody you love, or a family member, a friend, or an intimate partner. But so how does that happen when you're on a bike? Well, you're riding together as a pack. And you're bonding together, and in many ways you can emit some oxytocin, although dopamine is a much stronger bit here, and adrenaline. The third one is serotonin, which does come from aerobic fitness, that is already well documented, and that helps you with your happiness and your mood. And the last one, fifth one, is endorphins. Typically, this is triggered when you're in pain, and it's a way to reduce pain. And it's kind of like a morphine hit, and so that buzz you feel after the workout, that positive feeling. Like after I do a great workout, I want to talk about it and tell people in social. They don't always want to hear it, but it's because I'm on my high, right? Yeah. So that's a dose. What do you think?
What do I think about the whole formula? I think it's, you've nailed it. You nailed it. I want to put this in a chapter. I want to have you write that chapter because it's just, you just nailed it. It's on point. Love it. Nothing like asking on a live show if you can get permission for someone. But yeah, no, seriously, Jeremiah, you nailed it. And again, combining the negative and positive of when we're getting those doses and how do we get them, right? And I've seen this now more than ever in the past 3 months. People aren't working, they're at home more. Even if they are working, like you and I, it's kind of nothing new for us when we've been working from home for many years. But there's so many more people that are online. So now every time I go online, it's a new hit. There's a new post by someone else that I haven't seen, or it's a new friend, right? Because they're home for the first time. So it's been
new internet drama, right? Or even clickbait or chaos, what's happening, in politics, all of that can trigger those behaviors, and we have to be mindful. But for those business owners that are tuning in now, like your business models have changed, all of ours have. So think about how can you use those strategies, the community strategies, to help people get tied to your brand. How can you release content on a frequent basis? You can use this formula for your own product and experience design.
Right. And that's what I like about this formula, a dose. If you look at that and you model, and if you look at Peloton, if you look at CrossFit, what they did, right? Because it's the same thing. They brought the tribe together and you got excited, and the people that had common interests bonded together on a level that if you weren't in the club, if you weren't in that experience, you just didn't get it. You could describe it, but it was impossible to really appreciate it. So I love this because no matter what kind of business you are in, you can look at Jeremiah's formula about what Peloton did or CrossFit did or whatever the tech fitness addiction is doing, right? Facebook. And you follow this and find out, how do you give them the emotional high? How do you get engagement? And that's even just the likes. I remember back in the day when there was like the thumbs up, like why do people do that? And it says, I see you. I was here. I read your post. I'll see friends of mine that, they show me a post on their phone. I'm like, hit like. How did you not hit the heart? Because some people don't. And that's the other thing too that's interesting is a lot of people will see your post, they just don't engage with it or they don't like it. Do you give people formulas, companies, on how to boost engagement and what to do?
No, I don't. I'm not so involved with that. I mean, some companies explicitly ask for that. I'm not sure one needs to do that, just create compelling content. So I'd say that would be the first thing to do.
So one of the things I want to kind of jump back to actually here on your wall, I'm going to bring this up here. This is when I had you on the show. This is one of the things we talked about when cars became alive. So I have to say, this is one of the things I've always liked about conversations with you, whether it's on Twitter or at Blog World or some expo, is you get me to think, and you get me to think in such a way it opens up my mind to another way of looking at something. So for me, when I had that conversation, I think I told you before I brought you on the show, I'm like, I'm one of those old-fashioned people who I love driving. I don't like this idea that cars are going to be self-driving. But you brought up several points in 2017 about how it's going to be less dangerous and how there'll be less accidents, and all of those things combined, I've been seeing it. So I was in the back of an Uber at least twice where we would have absolutely been in an accident had it not been for the computer technology and smartness that slammed on the brakes when she was going too far. Right. And I'm like, I'm that classic backseat driver. I'm like, I think you might need to brake. Like what, do you not see the cars coming in the next row? And then all of a sudden it just jerked us. And she was even shocked. She was like, oh, what happened? I'm like, oh my gosh, that was your car driving. That wasn't even you figuring it out at the last minute.
Well, I'm glad you're okay, first of all.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the most dramatic one. There was another time, same thing. I was like, wow, thank goodness for some of this technology. It will keep us safe. So I have to say I've changed my opinion on that. I will still love driving my car. I will still love it. But I do like that this is going to be progress that can help save lives. Right.
I think that's great. I think the timeline has been pushed back now as I talk to the self-driving car companies, because they're not able to test right now during quarantine because they need the cars on the road with people in them to be testing it. So it's been pushed back a bit, but certainly it's still underway.
Right. And I imagine that even if you put them out on the road, they'd be like, oh, there's really not a lot of traffic here. So it might skew their results. I don't know. But that was one of the things that I'd heard. And I was in the back of an Uber that was a Tesla Uber, and he said he was pretty much letting his car drive for him. Now he still has to have his hands like on or
Correct.
near the wheel.
Right.
But that was an interesting experience to be there, and several experiences like that. So it's very interesting how our technology has moved. One of the things that I had heard is that they weren't observing or recognizing red and green lights. So that was a little nervous. I don't know if they've improved that or what's
That's kind of an important thing to recognize.
Yeah, that made me a little nervous. But you were, was this the BMW? Let me just put this
That's
up
speech.
here.
Yep. I was in Frankfurt at the Frankfurt Auto Show, and BMW was hosting a TED event, and they asked, there was a contest for 6 ideas to come forward, and I was selected to present to an international audience. And so it was with the TED organization, and we had to go through tremendous training and rehearsals, so many rehearsals, to get it all nailed down into just like the 5-minute speech. So that was a lot of fun, and I'll never forget that. That was definitely a career highlight to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you nailed it. So all the practice was worth it. Yeah. Next thing I would like to touch on, although if you want to talk a little bit more about the cars aspect, because that's certainly what our future looks like. So again, this is where, and has that always been something that you've been interested in as far as where our future is going? And how long have you lived?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah. So my career is to look at how new technologies emerge and how will society and business engage, interact, integrate them. And so that's just kind of the pattern that I've done as new sets of technologies emerge. And so I love to just jump in and track that. And I've made a living out of it. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Have you always lived in the North, in Silicon Valley?
Silicon Valley, yes. Yes, I've been here since I was 21.
Do you think there is anything part of the culture or educational system that gets, because I looked at it and you go, all right, if you look at a map of the US, you have all the finance happening over on the East Coast, New York, right? Wall Street. But then you have all of the tech companies in just massive in Silicon Valley. So why is that? Is there an energy vortex in both of these places? Is it?
Well, there's also the media industry, right, in LA, and then the energy is in Texas, right? And so you know, and then the agriculture is in the Midwest. So yeah, there's certain regional hubs. So Silicon Valley, I'd say the genesis was clearly when the chips were being developed. You know, there was a group of people back in the 1950s and 60s that started to put this together, and the government was helping sponsor it. But this was happening in other locations as well. So Palo Alto Park Research Center was one of the core areas. But I think the culture has a lot to do with it, in particular the hippie movement with the open-mindedness and diversity of ideas, and crazy ideas are encouraged. I mean, you think about the mottos that Steve Jobs brought forward. Also, there's typically large educational institutions, to your point, that help to establish that. And so Stanford was a critical one. And those millionaires and billionaires all settled in that region close to Palo Alto, which became the investor community on Sand Hill Road in Palo Alto. And the data shows that the investors tended to fund startups that were in their regional area. That's a bad thing, by the way, but it is a thing. And so the entrepreneurs knew to come here, and that was a gravitas for the talent because the investment was here. And so it just started to become a magnet, and now it is a hub at this point. But it's not the only one. Tech is spreading to other locations all around the globe, and that's kind of the point. Yeah, Silicon Valley should be a mindset, a concept. It shouldn't be a physical location, and I think that's really critical.
And do you see that right now after COVID-19, with everyone working from home, it's changing? And then I've been reading articles how people are now no longer required to live in this really highly expensive. Right. So where are they moving south to San Diego? Are they moving back Midwest?
I haven't seen the reports and the data, but some of my friends tagged me on posts where realtors in San Joaquin Valley, like Sacramento, are showing homes. 10 to 12 people are visiting a home from the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. So that's a sign. A realtor in Portland, my friend Judy Christensen, she said, hey, we're going to start opening up the market here in Portland. Of course, San Diego is where I want to be and would love to retire someday. So maybe I can accelerate that. So absolutely. So a number of companies said you no longer need to physically be here, but I think that is for the rank and file workers. I think the executive class, the leadership class, the product leadership class will stay in Silicon Valley, but the other roles, I don't think they need to be physically here. So they may come in or drive in once or twice or 3 times a week, but they will stay from their home locations more frequently. This is going to have some significant economic impacts too, right? So the demand for housing in SF and Silicon Valley will decrease, and the housing needs for the second, third tiers of regions outside or even 1 hour flight from San Diego or Portland or Seattle, they're going to see a bump up too, where people or might even go much further to another country and be able to maintain their employment. So we're going to see some significant ripples.
Now, do you think someone has a disadvantage if they move outside of the area as far as the rubbing shoulders and elbows when that does kind of come back in? Like, will they put themselves if they move out?
When we've interacted, of course, the best times we had when I get to physically visit you and your amazing places in San Diego, and you just can't replicate that with digital at this time. It's just so yes, you can't.
And that's powerful, by the way, Jeremiah, for other people to hear that from a tech insider, right? From someone who focuses on tech. And I think you and I share that same philosophy, and that's why we go to in-person events. Right? Like, sure, we do a lot of things digitally, but there's nothing that substitutes that in person. And there's something about the energy too, I think, that's exchanged for ideas.
I certainly agree. And so those that are still physically located by the headquarters will have an advantage to network upwards. I think that will be a reality.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things I'm going to bring onto the screen is the new hotness, which is Clubhouse. Totally jealous. Totally think this is again, it seems like how Twitter early days were around. So when I saw that post by Brian, another thought leader, I love, again, same thing with the two of you. If you were in the room in the Clubhouse, I'm 100% jealous and have FOMO. So tell us about Clubhouse. You were saying in a chat that it's the new hotness. What is it and where do you see it going?
So it is like early Twitter from 12 years ago. And yes, there it is. So it is it's a voice-based social network. So if you're familiar with Discord in the gaming community, it's like that. It's a voice community. I have it actually right here. So well, there's nobody in it right now because I guess people are working, but this kind of the app, and then you can see people's faces in it. You can click around. Obviously, this is a poor representation. And then there's people talking, and it's voice only. There's no video. There's no text. So it's just voice. So it's in between. And voice gives a much better way to emote, and you're less likely to see people say crappy things to each other like you would do with Facebook and Twitter, because there's first of all, it's a continual real-time dialogue. There's no asynchronous, and you can't just volley, and say something like, "Oh, that's so typical of what I would expect you to say," which could be interpreted as, "Oh, that's so typical. I definitely expect to hear you say something like that." So you can interpret that in a different way, right? Or things like, there's a lot of things that could be misconstrued. Or if you're trying to be a jerk too, like that's more likely to happen over two keyboard warriors. So when you hear their voice or see somebody, of course, with video, you can have that better emotion. So why not a video? People are getting Zoom fatigue, and when you have video on, when you're doing real time, you actually have to keep it on and you have to focus, and the video quality is not as high as what we're doing right now. People might have kids running around, they have a crappy computer, they have a crappy camera, they have crappy Wi-Fi, it requires more bandwidth. So audio is kind of like this intermix that's happening. So it is like Twitter, and the conversations that we're having there are deep. So there's many. Well, you can see right there. Look at that. There's five Black people there. So the conversations that we're having are diverse. We are hearing from Black Lives Matter leaders. We are hearing from tech leaders, VCs, journalists are in there, and we're having deep discussions that are hopefully not being published anywhere. Of course, they could be recorded, and we're talking about the topics du jour. Race, equality, inequity. We're talking about tech companies. We're talking about politics, like stuff you can't really, like things you would probably talk about at a conference, but we can't go to conferences now. So the timing for this app is also really good. Of course, there's risks, right? When the world opens up again, when there is an antidote and a vaccine, will people want to use this app? We'll have to see. And then, of course, there's a scaling issue. How do you get thousands of voices on here, millions of voices, billions of voices for this app? So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Now, what's your thought about, so one of the conversations I guess I saw on Brian Solis's wall was, will it scale? And then some people are saying we don't want it to scale. So what are your thoughts about the future? Will it scale? Is it something that you think is for now? Like you said,
they have to figure that out. So the founder, Paul, who I was in one of the rooms chatting with last night, they raised a significant amount of money, and their lead investor is Andreessen Horowitz. And so that, go back to that picture, please.
Oh, sure.
His wife is Felicia Horowitz, and so she is leading one of the most popular shows on the app. And so when the company is now valued at 100 million, and there's only 2,600 users. So they kind of have to scale, because that's not sustainable. So the answer is they have to scale. They need to get to 1 billion users like Facebook. They have to. There's no question. When you raise money from Andreessen Horowitz, it's about going global and going big. So they will have to turn on. Oh yeah, Jared Leto was in the room with me last night. I could see him in there listening to our conversation, which was
that's interesting.
Strange, weird, normal. I don't know how to tell you. It's just a weird thing. So they'll have to turn on like a social graph, so you can only see your friends, or if there's celebrities, then everybody could see that. I mean, what happens so right now it leans very left, very liberal conversations. What happens when the rest of the world comes in? Are they going to have arguments verbally, or will they learn from each other with empathy through the voice? So we don't know.
Right. It'll evolve just like Twitter did, and just like any other app when it was in its infancy. Like, that's what I liked about Twitter when it first started. So when I would go out in the public, when it did go mainstream, like, Twitter, I hate it. I was like, I think your feed is just, who are you following? Because I love even now, I don't go there anywhere near like I used to. I mean, I could go a month and I don't even check Twitter. But when I do follow a hashtag in the conversation, because of the people I'm following, the people that come up, it seems to be a more intelligent feed, but other people don't. So this will be interesting if it scales, because like you said, once the world comes in, it changes the conversation.
Well, Facebook did it. It started off in a dorm room for dating, and it was exclusive just to people with Harvard email addresses. So if they did it, it could happen again.
Right. Yeah. So this is interesting. And then when did it start? Do we know about
March, April? So it's really new.
Okay. And then I'm going to scroll back up here with this past week and Black Lives Matter and the conversations and posts.
Intense conversations.
Yeah. So is someone leading it and then you pop in? Like, how do you interrupt? Like, how does that work?
So anybody can create a room, and then you are the moderator, and people can choose to join it. And there's a couple of different roles. You can be in the audience, which is listen only, or you could raise your hand and then ask to be on the stage, which is just your icon moves towards the top, as you can see in the screenshots that are public. And then you could be granted moderator access to invite other people or push them back into the audience. So the metaphor is really kind of like a conference, like a panel conference. Sometimes there's rooms with 10 speakers. Sometimes there's just like 2, if it's like somebody's interviewing a celebrity or a politician, which sometimes you see happening. So it is kind of like a conference. And the amount of information that I'm getting, I just take notes as I hear things. It is like going to a business conference. It's replacing something that is definitely missing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what do you think as far as in-person events? Any predictions on when they'll come back, if they will, in this coming year?
2021 spring, we'll see some emerge. Of course, there will be smaller meetings now, but big conferences probably not till fall 2021. The big tech conferences.
Yeah,
I think there's concern over liability, legal issues, and all of that. So, we have some challenges as a society for that.
What other predictions? Do you have any other predictions or thoughts on our future? Like, because of what's happened right now, like, how will our world change? What will it look like?
Well, so I did publish a diagram called the crisis cake. It's on my Facebook page. Yeah. And I was just illustrating that we have so many challenges, also opportunities, all at once. And so this is going to be creating a lot of mental problems and issues and struggles and depression and anxiety, understandably, for all of us. I have had some moments myself, of course. Mm-hmm. It has been a significant change for all of us. And I think that's one thing that we really need to think about. And I know it's kind of a cute thing, but it's a horrible thing. So you can see the different layers of the crisis cake. The infodemic is the amount of information, and also fake information.
Right.
Right. Fears of automation. We discussed that. Political uncertainty. We'll just open any news app and see that. Civil unrest. That's happening this minute. Somebody is probably doing something, breaking something right now in the United States. Racism, huge issue. Inequality. Yep, that's tied to that. And now we're in a recession. Could we shift to a depression? And then we have the pandemic. And then, of course, at the bottom, which is hidden by the lower third, is the climate crisis. So, wow, that's a lot, right? So what do we do, right? And how can we use technology to help solve these things? So technology can help us disperse information. Technology can help us find jobs for people that can be now working remote when they used to have to work on site. Technology can help us, emote to each other's. Where I live, there are not a lot of Black people in my particular city, which is unfortunate. So in Clubhouse, I'm hearing from Black friends that I've known or I don't know all around the country or around the world, and hearing directly from them their personal experiences and what they have to go through versus which I have not. I have privilege because of the way I was born, the way I look. Yes, I am a minority, but I am treated differently than how a Black person is in America. So for me and the others in the room, which included many CEOs and tech leaders and VCs, powerful people of a variety of colors, we all heard that and listened, and you could see people's behaviors starting to change in a level of understanding. There was definitely arguments, there was definitely crying. So that's an example of how technology can help us connect and understand each other better rather than fight.
Right. Right. And this was maybe 2 weeks ago, 3, I don't know, I'm losing track of time these days during quarantine, but you were talking about a documentary on PBS that I was able to even pull up online.
Thanks,
And tell us a little bit about that, because I remember when you shared that, that was for me part of our history that I only found out about when I went to, I'd be lying if I even remember the state I was in. I don't remember if it was Arizona, if it was Nevada, but I was in some museum. I mean, it could have been Washington. And I didn't even realize we had internment camps in America, right? And it was one of those things you walk in and you feel embarrassment and like shock. And all of a sudden, and all of the walls just had all of the people at that time, see their faces. So that was an incredible eye opener. And again, if we don't have these conversations, and I think that's what I've always liked about social media is I grew up in a small farm in New Jersey, and then I lived in Hawaii for 7 years. And in Hawaii, you have, again, like a small group of people you can interact with, but Twitter allowed me to interact with the world, right?
Global conversation. Yes.
Yeah. So this was an interesting, again, like, whoa, this is another awakening. And again, I look at your crisis cake and it's in there, right? As far as inequality and racism and allowing us to talk about those conversations. So I don't know if you want to talk about anything about that documentary, mention it so that people can check it out.
Sure. Yeah, PBS did. It was on Asian Americans, and I watched some of it, at least the first episode, and it's hard. Some parts are very hard, and the story of Asian Americans, at least some of that has not been told or is not well known. There's multiple reasons. The Asian community is a lot quieter around those topics for some reasons that I don't want to just get into right now. We're talking about a variety of things, but please check out that and understand the ethos. It's one of the fastest growing Asian Americans. We are one of the fastest growing demographics, and we don't want to integrate with everybody else. So it is eye-opening as we learn all of these stories about the diversity and all the people in the United States. So that's great. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Again, and I think we wind up getting, we talked a little bit before about the media and where it focuses our attention. And now social media is media, right? So we wind up falling into the same thing that traditional media did, because someone is directing the conversation and we're being led. But yet there's all of these other conversations, there's all these other issues that are around, but we're not focusing on them. So I think it doesn't matter if it's a popular conversation to have. It's like, these are the important conversations.
And it's really interesting. I would not have been comfortable to talk about race, like 3 months ago on a show with you. I would have
avoided it.
I really wouldn't have said, but now everybody's talking about it. It's out in the open. It is a thing to talk about. So we are now, as a society, a country, a culture, humans, talking about the problems on that crisis cake. that is a new thing, and that is step one for us to acknowledge and discuss, the issues that we have to solve, and we need to fix these things. And when we help marginalized communities, in this particular case, African Americans, Black Americans, it helps everybody too. So this is something we all need to do as a society, and so. Well, I'll get off my soapbox, but I'm going to change my own behaviors too, now that I understand, which I can talk about at another time.
Well, and I liked when you brought up that crisis cake, because the overwhelming response that I was seeing, either as public posts or people that would DM me, how, just kind of checking in with friends and how you feeling and how are you doing, and mentally exhausted was the common thread. And when I looked at this crisis cake, I'm like, well, of course we're mentally exhausted.
Oh, it's so much. It's so much for everybody. And all of those items hit everybody in different ways. Yes, it is a lot. So taking care of ourselves, taking care of our minds. So that's why fitness has become such an important foundation, because it's one of the very few things that I actually have control over.
That's true.
I mean, it's sometimes, let's be honest, it's hard to control one's emotions when you see things, or like you're locked into your house, right? That's very difficult to control. I mean, yes, we can try to learn how to control how we react to things and understand our emotions, but it's a challenge for all of us. So physical fitness for me and a clean diet is like, really, that's all I can control.
Yeah. And you're an inspiration for it. I'm going to tell you, what times when I'm not in the mood, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess, and that's why I think we share. I think that's why we share those types of things. People, things come up, topics come up. We see someone doing something. We go, oh yeah, that elicits us to do it as well, which is really cool.
And we're connected. When I see your posts, you inspire me too. So I know how to get on my virtual bike as well, whatever that might be. So.
Yeah. Oh, then that's good. And it's funny too, because when you asked me about my experience with Peloton, I was like, oh, I definitely said too much, but you got me thinking, and I was able to copy paste it. It's going to be a chapter. I'll have to obviously.
That's great. When I asked any Peloton owner, I got a long list of the things they love. So you are actually the same as everybody else.
Yeah. I was like, you're going to regret asking.
No? Thank you for educating me.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I just want to rewind real quick, and then just ask you to wrap up anything for future that we should be paying attention to or keeping our eye on, especially in Silicon Valley, that we don't know as an insider. But one of the things you mentioned when we were talking about racism and this crisis cake, and is how, and I don't know if you and I came from a similar background, where when my grandparents came, all they wanted to do was assimilate, right? Like they immigrated here.
Where'd they come from? I'd love to hear.
So one family complete mutt, the other family Italian. So like I always related to it being Italian, but my dad's side, so many different races, so many different cultures, but all they did, both sides, they assimilated. So I'm like, wow, I could be speaking Spanish, Italian, like I could be trilingual at this point, and all I know is English with a little bit of sign language and a little bit of French, right? But because like they just try to assimilate. They just try to kind of fit in and figure out what is this culture of America. And now we're finally seeing, wow, there's all of these other cultures, and we start learning. And for me, I was in New York, so pretty much growing up in the New York area. Even though my immediate family went down to a farm in New Jersey, so it's a little more isolating, but I saw all of these different cultures. And when we would visit my grandmother in Staten Island in New York, you would just go from one neighborhood to another. It was like going from one country to another. Like you went into one 7-Eleven, and I kid you not, I didn't know how to buy toothpaste. See, toilet paper is still in the mind from quarantine. I remember picking up a jar of toothpaste, and I'm like, I think this is toothpaste, but it was all in Polish. I think it was like there were no English subtitles. There was no English signs. It was like, if you're not Polish and you're in this little store, well, good luck finding something. But yeah, so like it's very, very interesting.
I love that about America, is like all these different cultures. I mean, that is what makes us, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And I think, again, like knowing what's happening in Clubhouse, like now all of a sudden we're able to have all of these conversations, right? Like you and I on DM, and you sharing the documentary, like it's just allowed us to start talking and opening up the dialogue and learning more about one another, which is exciting.
And I think that's critical. I mean, you take the social networks, they've been divisive. Like you choose your Facebook, and then you get confirming information of the things you've already selected. People who are purple, they choose one way and they head that way, and all they get is blue content, or all they get is red content.
Yeah.
That has separated us in a bad way. And we need to come back together and start talking again as a country. We really need to do that.
And I remember in the early days, that's one of the conversations on Twitter that came up. It's like, well, if you're only following people that believe like you and think like you, well, then what kind of news do you get? Right? Myopia. So, and then we also see this next level of now people are just fighting. So every time I go online, and I don't know where the echo is coming from. I don't know if you hear it. Do you hear it? Oh, if you don't hear it, that's good. Oh, good. Okay. I'm going to close out all of these windows here just in case anything's coming in. But yeah, so I that's one thing for me is when I'm going on social, now I start seeing the dangers and some of the things people talked about when I was just a fan. You know, in 2006 with Twitter and then YouTube and Facebook, all those things, I was just a fan because it opened up our world. Now I'm starting to see some of the negative aspects of it where, fighting. So any thoughts or solutions on what we can do to kind of say cure the crisis cake? I don't know how you would label that, but like, how do we get on top of that to get out of crisis and into that good mode? Because one of the things I love about you, Jeremiah, is when you post things, you make me think, you open my mind, and then I'm able to be innovative. Right. So how do you do that for yourself, especially when we're in chaos, when we're in crisis? Like, we still have to work. We still have to produce. We still have to innovate, especially now more than ever. All these small business owners, I think I was busier more than ever in the past 3 months because every business owner was calling me up like, how do we pivot? What do we do? Right. So what do you do to control your mind? I know we were talking about the workout. I think that's a big part of it. But what else do you do to get yourself into a good thought process versus out of a bad one?
Yes. So we're all reacting right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have been reacting since spring.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to build scenarios of what the future would hold. And so I think about like what's going to happen all the way till the end of the year, and try to forecast these different things could happen. What could be the triggers for those things to happen? For example, in July, we'll probably have negative financial earnings. So we're going to see markets pull back and companies might panic, and there might be more layoffs, which will result in other things, right? And many of these items that I'm forecasting are not probably the most positive ones. Right. And there's some other ones out there as well, but I'm thinking ahead, what is likely to happen? Right. And as I am a small business owner as well, so we're trying to think about what would this mean for our clients, but also for our business as well, and just trying to figure this out. But honestly, we're reacting as well. So one way that I do to make sure is I'm talking to a lot of people from even before I was using that Clubhouse app, just interviewing people, talking to people, getting on DMs, sharing links, just trying to get more information and talking to people around the globe as well, which is accessible to all of us now through these free telecommunication tools. So staying connected and getting that info.
Yeah. Now, I know you speak and you did a lot of in-person speaking. Do you find you're getting more opportunities to speak for companies because and does it reduce the budget because there's no travel?
So it's hard to say because they're just now picking up virtual events. I'd say about the same, but it's very different, right? So they're doing smaller webinars rather than a big conference. So the value is less. So there may or may not be as much money, but it's also less cost. Instead of 3 days of travel to get somewhere, it's 2 prep calls and a 10-minute prep because I'm just turning on my computer. Right. So the costs are different, the value's different, and the ways companies are doing this, it has changed. So I have a speech that I just did with HPE, Hewlett Packard. I did another one with Automation Anywhere and one with Splunk that's going to be happening. So it's definitely starting to pick up, and I hope more will come.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I loved seeing that. I'm like, wow, this could open up more opportunities for speakers, especially when I lived in Hawaii, I had to say no to a lot of things and I would refer them to either clients or people that I knew. I'm like, hey, there's this, one of them was a Tony Robbins event. I was like, you want to share the stage with Tony Robbins? Because I can't get there in time. So, but now it's the world's open. So I'm looking at all these opportunities. I love what you're doing with the Airstream. So one of the things too is when they said Faraday cage, is that really the name of it as a technical? Because when I heard that, I immediately thought the movie Ready Player One. Did you see that?
So I think I did see it, but I don't remember it in the movie. So a Faraday cage is a real device, right? That disables any Wi-Fi or cell phone, but this is not a Faraday cage.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you've got like this big picture window behind you and you see the palm trees moving with the wind. It's just great. It's a great background. It's a great background.
A lot of people think it's fake.
Yeah.
Maybe it is fake. Maybe it's just, I'm just pretending. No, but here's an apple. Check it out.
It interacts with the background. So now we know it's not a fake background.
Now it's just a digital animation.
Yeah. Well, thanks for carving out this time. And I know we did a different time because you take care of the children in the afternoon. Is that a regular daily thing? How many? 2 children?
I have 3 kids.
3. How old?
What's that?
How old are they?
7, 2, and 2.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's right. Because the twins. That's why I was.
So when we didn't have childcare and my wife was working at the hospital, that was a stressful period.
Yeah. Wow. I was saying to all my friends, because some of them have older friends or children, they have teenagers. I'm like, every parent who has 3 children under 7 and you have twins and 7-year-olds, so that might add to the stress. How did you handle it?
I struggled.
Yeah.
I struggled.
I think every parent did.
I struggled. And that was a challenge.
Yeah.
And so this quarantine has been difficult for everybody. We've all had to deal with it in different ways. Yeah. But I am thankful and grateful that, I have business partners that help me and clients are patient. But it was very difficult to get any work done during that time.
Yeah. Do you remember the newscaster who had his kid in, right? I feel like everyone became sympathetic to that guy, right?
Noises and calls now is like if you had a kid walk behind you right now, I wouldn't care. Right. But like people 2 years ago, they're like, oh, that's so unprofessional. But now it's like, oh, isn't that cute?
Right. I was starting to watch Jimmy Fallon's The Home Edition because all of a sudden he had all the children like just crawling all over him. They did the intro with him. I'm like, wow, this is better than the show. I like this better than the studio. And a lot of I always read comments on YouTube. And that was one of the biggest comments. Like people are like, don't go back to the show. Like keep this episode in because all of a sudden everyone related, especially as parents looking at it going, oh my gosh, that's what I'm struggling with. So I think that was his genius to sharing it.
And celebs are being really honest and open, and putting down the Instagram filters and showing what it's like in the real life.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're well. And I love this innovative way of getting a home office. I think more people will start doing that and you'll probably get some questions.
Sure.
And more speaking, if anyone's thinking of hiring Jeremiah as a speaker, phenomenal thought leader. Hire that guy. Opposite on this. Hire this guy. Yes, thanks for always inspiring me, expanding my mind, and for your time, Jeremiah Owyang.
Thank you.
The joy, that's what I always think of, joy from your Twitter handle. And then anywhere that you would want people to follow you, your blog, I'm thinking specifically.
Sure. My Twitter account, you'll find links to everything there. That's a great way. Most of my content's public on all the social networks. I'm easy to find.
Yeah. And Twitter, it's J Owyang, right?
That's right.
Yeah. That's why we saw it as joy. You were always smiling too. So I think it kind of connected the brand with the emotion.
There's a lot of things we can all be grateful for. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day, Jeremiah.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Aloha.